But I listened very carefully to the Stuart Smallpin arrogant dunce young. But I couldn't play the whole thing. But run it at you. Only listen carefully.
Would not pursue the deal because the operators, Shell, would go nowhere near it because of fear of sanctions. We did not give up. We very quietly came up with a strategy that we implemented as soon as possible, a change of administration in the United States, all of the time maintaining our relationship with Venezuela. When we were in the middle of COVID and our borders were closed, and the Vice President of Venezuela, who remains the Vice President today, Delcy Rodriguez, wrote to us diplomatically and said, I would like to come to Trinidad and Tobago, and I, as the Minister of National Security, on the advice of the Prime Minister, allowed the Vice President of Venezuela to come to Trinidad and Tobago. The opposition led the charge on behalf of President Guaido, who they don't know where he is today, to say that the Prime Minister, they wrote to the United States government that Prime Minister Keith Rowley and Stuart Young should be sanctioned. That is the behavior of the opposition to undermine what is being done for the people of Trinidad and Tobago. We pressed on.
Well, that one we went to. I hope you all followed it. Stuart Smallpin Young, now the Minister of Energy, said yesterday in the Senate that he, on the advice and authority of the Prime Minister, after Vice Presidente Delcy Rodriguez had written and requested a meeting to deal with dragon gas and oil issues, and gave a team of PDVSA officials to come and meet with Rowley face to face during COVID when you could not come home. Stuart Young just said the Vice President Delcy Rodriguez wrote to the Prime Minister requesting a face-to-face meeting. This was part and parcel of their relationship, and since 2016, how they were negotiating to get the dragon gas deal going and so on. And Stuart Smallpin Young, the Minister of National Security, he just threw Rowley under the bus. He said he went to the Prime Minister and made the request, and the Prime Minister authorized him to sign an exemption for Delcy Rodriguez and the PDVSA officials to land at Piarco during COVID. But here the problem. When he was the Minister of National Security, he didn't say that. He said, in fact, he didn't know who was on the plane. He didn't know the jet was sanctioned. He didn't know anything. And that Delcy Rodriguez was coming to talk COVID. He and Rowley talk all through the mouth. Let me remind all you. Put up some images, run some video, remind them, Archie. Look here, this came out 2 days after. This is all the information that went to the Ministry of National Security and was signed off by Stuart Smallpin Young. All of the people, Delcy Rodriguez, look, Astrubal Chavez, passport number and so on, signed off. But Rowley, when Kamala came out and busted in the press conference that the sanctioned, indicted Delcy Rodriguez and oil czars and oil executives from PDVSA had landed in Trinidad and Tobago, check what Rowley said. Run the video.
Some person called Astrubal Chavez, who I'm now discovering as part of the commission, he worked as part of a commission for PDVSA restructuring somewhere in his past. Nobody in that meeting was introduced to us as president of PDVSA. Nobody.
Go back now, actually, I'm going to confuse you a bit. Go back to the last Smallpin video that you played from the Senate yesterday, hot off the press, because Rowley and Stuart Smallpin Young said that Delcy, her visit was per the moment. It was not planned. There was no request. There was no agenda. They didn't know who was on the plane. They didn't know it was oil officials. But yesterday, Stuart Smallpin Young, in trying to blow his own horn, talked about the history and the timeline of the efforts and how hard he and Rowley were working for this dragon gas, because they realized that it's proven, and they did all the efforts while they didn't do anything else. So when dragon gas failed, the country failed. But listen carefully, because Rowley just tell you, Asdrubal Chavez, PDVSA, oil, I don't know what all they're talking about. They came to talk about COVID-19 and the 16,000 Venezuelans that were here and what sort of assistance. We didn't talk about look what Small Pin say yesterday. Run it.
Could not pursue the deal because the operators, Shell, would go nowhere near it because of fear of sanctions. We did not give up. We very quietly came up with a strategy that we implemented as soon as possible, a change of administration in the United States, all of the time maintaining our relationship with Venezuela. When we were in the middle of COVID and our borders were closed, and the Vice President of Venezuela, who remains the Vice President today, Delcy Rodriguez, wrote to us diplomatically and said, I would like to come to Trinidad and Tobago. And I, as the Minister of National Security, on the advice of the Prime Minister, allowed the Vice President of Venezuela to come to Trinidad and Tobago. The opposition led the charge on behalf of President Guaido, who they don't know where he is today, to say that the Prime Minister, they wrote to the United States government that Prime Minister Keith Rowley and Stuart Young should be sanctioned. That is the behavior of the opposition to undermine what is being done for the people of Trinidad and Tobago. We pressed on.
Now put up, let's go back, 2020, around April, May. Put up some articles. Let's hear what Stuart Small-Pin Young, National Security Minister, Stuart Young, has said. There is no record of what was discussed at the meeting between Venezuelan Executive Vice President Delcy Rodriguez and Prime Minister Dr. Keith Rowley. He said minutes were not recorded, nor were photographs taken. The minister also said there was no preset agenda. He just said Delcy Rodriguez wrote and requested a meeting, and you don't. If you all understand protocol, just a meeting, I just want a meeting to what? Sit down on the red couch past 3 dog and a parrot? No, he was boasting about Dragon Gas yesterday, and he said this was the relation, this was the work going on to continue the relationship and to discuss and to move it forward, and that Shell, the Shell executive, didn't want none of that. Because them say, we not talking nothing about that because it has sanction. But he, Stuart Young, on the advice of the Prime Minister, them went to talk. So he admitted yesterday the discussions were about Dragon Gas, about PDVSA, and they were all PDVSA officials. He said, the minister also said, there was no preset agenda, and they did not know who would be accompanying Rodriguez to the meeting. Go back to the list you just showed me there, Archie. I'm giving you plenty hard work, but I want my people, look, this is signed by the Ministry of National Security and approved by Stuart Small-Pin Young. Look, Mr. Asdrubal Chavez, all of these, Santana, Bautista, those are all PDVSA officials. Delcy came with 5 PDVSA officials. Stuart Small-Pin Young yesterday in defending the motion on Dragon Gas and Venezuela gas, exploration gas, assumption gas to Trinidad and Tobago, discussed and boasted that he and Rowley brought Delcy to discuss that. The minister also said there was no preset. Young said he did not know what aircraft the Venezuelan delegation was using. Right? He didn't know. He's the only man who knew because they had all of that information, and he's the only one who could have given the exemption. Put up another one. Young said when the Venezuelan delegation arrived, they did not have contact with all of them. We saw them. They were brought into the diplomatic center and they went down a corridor into a housing bay. He said Prime Minister Keith Rowley and Foreign Affairs Minister Dennis Moses met with Rodriguez and Chavez, who were in personal protection equipment gear. He said the conversation was about the 16,523 people who are registered in Trinidad and Tobago who are Venezuelans, plus the more that may be here. He added an offer was made by Venezuela to provide COVID test kits, which was declined by Trinidad and Tobago. Archie, run back Small-Pin from here. Wait, let me see that one. put it up, and then run back small print from yesterday, because this is the lies of yesteryear, and listen to the truth of yesterday. Young said Chavez was not PDVSA president at that time. Yes, but he was a PDVSA official. Chavez is a Chavista. Maduro, he is oil and gas. He is Wilmer Ruperti. We did not know the type of plane. We did not know the rest of the delegation at our level, meaning the cabinet ministers accompanying the prime minister. That is not unusual. Show back the document with all of that. Right? Show back the document that he approved. Look, all the name, all the passport number, all the information. He knew everything. He approved it. And yesterday he said he went and asked the Prime Minister, and the Prime Minister, Keith Rowley, approved it. Let's hear him again. Throw Rowley under the bus. Run that video again, Archie.
Not pursue the deal because the operators, Shell, would go nowhere near it because of fear of sanctions. We did not give up. We very quietly came up with a strategy that we implemented as soon as possible, a change of administration in the United States, all of the time maintaining our relationship with Venezuela. When we were in the middle of COVID and our borders were closed, and the Vice President of Venezuela, who remains the Vice President today, Delcy Rodriguez, wrote to us diplomatically and said, I would like to come to Trinidad and Tobago. And I, as the Minister of National Security, on the advice of the Prime Minister, allowed the Vice President of Venezuela to come to Trinidad and Tobago. The opposition led the charge on behalf of President Guaido, who they don't know where he is today, to say that the Prime Minister, they wrote to the United States government that Prime Minister Keith Rowley and Stuart Young should be sanctioned. That is the behavior of the opposition, to undermine what is being done for the people of Trinidad and Tobago. We pressed on.
So the opposition was trying to undermine. Not that he admitted that he, despite Shell and other companies saying they wouldn't touch it, they don't want to touch that, sanctions a serious thing. He and Rowley say, yeah, we go do that, we is boss, we hubris, we arrogant, we in charge, and we in your face. Come Delcy, come PDVSA, we go talk that. That is an admission that they were negotiating to broker a deal and break sanctions. Why? So why Shell didn't meet? Because they have integrity. They understand the rule of law, the processes. They understand the seriousness. But Rowley and Smallpin play with all your future.